We are back on BKO Nightly. It is time to dip into the Mailbag, a weekly segment where we ask you guys to ask us some questions. And Thad Brown is out in Orchard Park right now, ready to answer everything you need to know before this Ravens game on Sunday. So first question is from ex-user at Mr. Ed315. Mr. Ed315 wants to know, Thad, scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this roster and why?
I think it's a great question, and I think I ended up landing on a 7. I started a little higher, but the more you think about it, I do have questions about the depth on defense. I don't want to overreact to preseason, but I think the facts are we haven't seen enough from what we have seen in the preseason to feel confident if the Bills have to go with someone other than the starters. And obviously, we might have that situation Sunday night because Trey White and Christian Benford are both, at this point, fairly big questions to be on the field. In addition, look, the Bills have a lot of options for upgrading the defense. TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, Michael Hoyt, Joey Bosa. These are all guys who, in theory, and not even having to reach that far to think about it, could be big-time impact makers for this Bills defense. But I don't feel confident about any one player really having that much of an impact. Bosa certainly would lead the list. I think Deion Walker has been frisky in preseason, but the jury very much is still out on a lot of those guys. And for rookies, it should be right now. Offensively, I think the Bills are pretty stacked, but it's the same offense we saw last year. As long as the O-line and James Cook are healthy and playing at the level they were at last year, I don't know how much the receiving group matters. I think the receiving group is probably a little bit better because Amari Cooper really didn't offer them much last year. But overall, look, this is a team built on number 17 being otherworldly, and he has been, the offensive line being exceptional, and it has been, and then a few pieces here and there, but the extraneous pieces, the supporting pieces, to me, aren't special enough to take the roster anything above a 7. Now, look, Josh Allen is going to take any roster and upgrade it a 1.5. So if you're a 5, you're really a 6.5. For the Bills, a 7 is an 8.5 or a 9 just because of Josh Allen. But really looking at the roster, Rachel, I land on a 7.
Now, you mentioned the defensive injuries kind of being a thing to watch this weekend, and with the Ravens run game, we have Lamar Jackson, we have Derrick Henry. User at Cognetti Rick wants to know, how do the Bills stop the run this weekend?
Yeah, well, good question. I mean, I think the answer to that is they probably won't stop it, but I think they've seen it enough to understand what they have to do. You hear a lot from these guys about a lot of hats to the ball. Look, no one wants to take on Derrick Henry by themselves, so you do need teammates to be able to rally up and make it 4 or 5 guys tackling him, not one. The other thing is, and especially when it comes to teaching the rookies how to play defense, and we talked a lot about that. We've heard more from that in the show already, or we will later on tonight. But making sure the rookies understand that you don't want to get overwhelmed by the big picture. Oh my goodness, it's Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. You just got to worry about your gap, taking on the guard or the center in front of you and just doing your job. And that really extends to everybody on this defense. Look, the Ravens are going to make plays. Lamar Jackson is an MVP for a reason, same as Josh Allen. But being able to have that short memory, keep things small, keep it to this play, not the last 4, that'll be the key for the Bills to hang in. I think there are a lot of questions about whether or not they can be effective enough to win the game. I rewatched that playoff game from last year. In the second half, the Ravens did a lot of anything they wanted when it comes to the run game. How much better some of these guys can be, how much of a difference maker they can be in that particular area, I think is very much in question Sunday night.
Now, our final question here from ex-user at BrevitUp. Have you seen enough from the D-line to help the secondary out?
Not yet. It can be, again, look, Joey Bosa by himself can be a difference maker. If we get Joey Bosa from 3 years ago, even for just this game Sunday night, that totally changes the equation on defense. And I think that's where the Bills want to start. After that, could TJ Sanders be an impact player? Sure. Deion Walker has shown some ability to get to the quarterback, I think more so than most people thought. So that's a guy that could also have a help. Sitting here right now, do I think they have enough to really make the issues in the secondary irrelevant or irrelevant enough? I think the answer right now is no, but there are certainly plenty of options that could change that Sunday night. Again, we're basing a lot of this on what we've seen in practices, in preseason games, where it is not full go, it is not 100% football. That all changes Sunday night. So, what we're going to see in 60 minutes against the Ravens means a whole lot more than what we saw in the 6 weeks before that. So a lot of questions still to be answered, but if I got to answer that question right now, which is kind of the point of this segment, I think the answer right now is no.
All right, thank you, Thad. That's going to wrap up our weekly mailbag segment. Of course, you can ask Thad questions every week at ThadBrown7 on X, but that is going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next week. All your pressing questions, head over to Twitter, over to X, and you can ask Thad Brown all you want to know before each game. Thank you, Thad.